in our community here at Bayside Church, we have David Hemp, who is a professional cricket player. Professional sportsman is probably a better way to say that. He was born in Bermuda, and he played for a county team called Glamorgan in Wales. I got that wrong yesterday. So
Luke actually said England yesterday, which is as a Welshman, that's not a good start.
My apologies. I got it right this morning. So welcome, and tell us a bit about those early days growing up. Obviously, you moved from Bermuda to Wales, and where did you get your passion for cricket?
Good morning, everybody. Yes, I was born in Bermuda. I don't know if you've seen any images of Bermuda, but it is a wonderful place, very picturesque. So when my parents decided in 1975 to move back to Swansea, I was a little bit disillusioned as to why. Swansea was their home. They got married and emigrated in the late 60s, and as a family decided to move back to South Wales, where they were from. So I was raised in Swansea. My dad was a local club cricketer, played at Swansea in a team called Fanoni. I won't ask you to repeat that because it's quite hard to say, but and I started my passion for the game, I guess, grew through that every Saturday afternoon. Gone along watching him play. Used to go with some friends, and we'd play at the side of the pitch, side of the ground, throughout the whole summer. So they were very fond memories for me. I guess that's for me where the passion for the game started. I actually, as a young, young teenager, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, that sort of era, I actually wanted to be a professional soccer player. Or internationally known as football, as opposed to footy in AFL terms. But by the age of 15, realised that dream wasn't to happen. So turned all the attentions to cricket.
So was professional sports in the family?
No, Dad was a reasonable club cricketer. My grandfather was a reasonable football player. So there was no history in that. I guess I was just fortunate to have a reasonably good hand-eye coordination, which led down the cricket path.
So I did a bit of Googling during the week to find out some stats, and I found out you were pretty good. So a couple of stats. You played for about 15 years in the county scene there. Then you ended up captain of Glamorgan in 06, which is quite an achievement. Then you went on and played for Bermuda, top scored 247. Tell us about that game and that achievement and how that came about.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the opportunity to play professional cricket was unbelievable. As a kid, cricket was a hobby of mine, but to do that and to get paid for doing that was, for me, was just a dream come true. To play at all the test venues around the UK, even since not just county cricket, but obviously playing internationally with Bermuda, to tour the world and play at some of the test venues, the best venues in the world, I'm certainly very fortunate. In terms of personal stats, the 247 was great. It was obviously personally it means quite a bit, but I don't sort of necessarily look at the stats. For me, it's about the impact you have within the changing room as a player and the impact you have on other players that you're playing with. If I looked at my stats, I would probably still think about innings that I threw away. So I don't tend to look at stats too much. But personally, that particular game was for Bermuda against Holland in Pretoria. The truth be known, it was on a very flat wicket. It was like playing on the road out there. So the 247, it really isn't that much of a feat, I don't think.
So the one-day international top score of 102 not out, that was a flat wicket, was it? Or
that wicket actually was a bit tricky, but again, it's that innings was against Kenya in a World Cup qualifying competition. Again, it brings back good memories. We actually lost that game, so it doesn't mean that much to me. But look, as I said, I think stats are great, and you can look back, and I certainly look back at some of those stats and think, yeah, well done, you've got some achievements. But for me, it's all around the impact you have on other players and how you're remembered within the changing room environment.
So you played through an era where I remember there were some amazing cricket players. Tell us about some of those people that you've played against, fastest bowlers that you faced, etc.
Debut back in the early 90s, so finished in 2008. So I had for me, I played, in terms of my cricket learning, I think I was very fortunate. I think when county cricket was professional, back in the early 90s when I started, although the mindset wasn't professional, so at the end of a day's play you'd find 12 pints of lager and a whiskey for the scorer, and that was the mindset. In 2008 when I finished playing, it was tracksuits on, back to the hotel, into the ice bath, into the pool, so it sort of transitioned through all that. I actually feel for young players today that miss the interactions that I had with, certainly in the county cricket system in the early 90s. And the first overseas player that I played with was Viv Richards, who those who know cricket would know Viv, and what he accomplished. So as a young player, it was wonderful to learn from him. County cricket was throughout that early, I guess mid-80s through to the late 90s, before the amount of international cricket progressed and you didn't get the best of the best. So for me, to play against and play with players like Akram, Marshall, Walsh, Ambrose, Lara, Donald, Callis, Ganguly, and then some of the Australians like Gillespie, Matthew Elliott, Mark Cosgrove, who some of you would know, was a wonderful time. And I think, very fortunate, because you learn. I've certainly found in that early part of the career, when you did socialise after the game, around a beer at the end of a day's play, which was the culture. You learn so much. So when Viv Richards talking to Malcolm Marshall, and you're not part of the conversation, you're just on the outskirts, but Malcolm turned around and says, I think you could do this differently. You sort of go, wow. So for me, it was a great start to my professional career, and certainly those conversations certainly, I believe, led to me to what I was able to get out of the game.
You mentioned last night Courtney Walsh. What I didn't tell you last night was I actually had the opportunity to face him when I was at high school. One ball, and he took out my metal stump. So, yeah. We actually have a picture of you. Left-handed batter, right-handed bowler, medium pace. Were you confused, or...?
No, all the best players are left-handed. No. For me, no. I think not to get too technical on people, but you control the bat with your top hand, so being right-handed was the right way to go. So all the right-handers out there, you're actually doing it the wrong way around. In terms of bowling, I wasn't much of a bowler. I was more of a net bowler, sort of help yourself sort of type bowler. So for me, that wasn't the background. For me, it was all about batting.
And your nickname Scraps, that I googled.
Yeah, I guess just someone that was always in amongst things and up for a fight, I guess. So that's the background to that.
That's a good way to be. When you do Google you, Dewayne Leverock comes up all the time, and we have a photo of him. There's got to be a story there, I'm sure.
Yeah, Dewayne Sluggo Leverock, as he's known, is a Bermuda cricketer. This catch was actually taken during the 2007 World Cup in the Caribbean. It was the first ball or second ball of a young debutant, so 17-year-old debutant. I think Robin Utapa was the Indian batsman at the time, and like a fantastic catch. If you Google it or YouTube it, you'll be able to see. Don't be put off by the size. This guy was actually a very, very talented sportsman, soccer and cricket. Left arm spinner by trade. And actually, pretty accomplished and has some really good stats for Bermuda. The best part of this was a very, very good catch, but was also the celebration. It took about 6 or 7 minutes to get everyone calm because he went off in one direction and players just started disappearing around the ground. So if you do look at it, it is quite comical.
So in light of what happened to the Australian team in regards to sandpaper in the pocket, tell us about cheating in the game and the morality of it and where that lies within cricket.
Yeah, I mean, I think not just cricket. I think every sport has its boundaries, I guess, and what those boundaries are and how you define those is, I think, quite interesting. If we go back to the Sandgate incident, yes, it was a different level that hasn't been seen, and I guess disappointing, and obviously the repercussions from the offence have now made people sort of look at the game slightly differently, and certainly how the powers that be, what those rules are, and the expectations around teams and individuals within teams. Really interesting for me because as a former player, when it took place, was I shocked? Yes, but in terms of the game, you do. Think about one-day cricket. When the ball's bounced in, why do they bounce the ball in one-day cricket? Because you're trying to get the ball soft. Everybody does it. So that's a part of the game. Players appeal for dismissals that they know probably aren't out, but they still appeal. Is that in the spirit of the game? Well, no. So people walk on the wicket or try and walk on the wicket because they try and alter it. Is that the spirit of the game? No. So there's lots of things that go on within the game. The big no-no for me was, as a player, was catches that were taken or claimed that actually bounced. For me, that wasn't. That was a no-no, and I didn't sort of think that was appropriate. But in terms of getting the ball soft and changing trying to alter the ball and the condition of the ball, those things are unfortunately part of the game. Like AFL. Tell
us about minties or mints.
Mints, yeah, the sweets are. It's again, people use, I guess, the sugar content in sweets in your saliva, and that has an impact on the ball in terms of shine. Why do people bounce the ball in? A, to get it soft, and then get the ball to what they call reverse. So there's those things going on in cricket, rightly or wrongly. That's just the nature of the game. It's if the umpires feel that there's something untoward in that, they will change the ball. But you watched the AFL game yesterday, and in and around the contest, people are pushing each other. That's fine, but away from that, there's still people pushing each other and getting each other's face. And I think so. Every sport has unwritten rules. I think as a player, you just adapt to that. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but that's just the way, the nature of sport and professional sport.
So if someone was thinking about going into professional sports, what advice would you give them?
Two pieces of advice. I think for me, if you are good and you have the opportunity, I would recommend you do it. I think often if you miss that moment, you can't get it back. So I did sort of waver a touch. I'd started to study accountancy straight after school for a couple of years. Didn't pass the exam, so I sort of got moved to the cricket field quicker than I would have liked. But for me, when I look back, if I hadn't taken that opportunity, I certainly know I would have regretted it. So I think if you get the opportunity as a youngster, whether male or female, then I would recommend that you put that in place and give it your best shot. And I guess in looking back, in hindsight, it's always wonderful. But I feel that there were certainly things I could have done slightly differently. So. One of the key things, the best decision I made was to give it a go, and I think that's what I recommend. I also recommend you get Plan B in place, so do some study, make sure that if it does come to an abrupt end, whether that's through injury, which can happen, or through just the nature of competitive competition within sport and competition for places, that you get moved on earlier than you'd like. I was fortunate, I'd say I had longevity within the game, but I would certainly recommend you get Plan B in place, but if you get the opportunity, then take it.
So, as a professional sports player, tell us about some of the impacts that has on, with all the commitments that it has on relationships, family, personal life.
I think if you're playing international cricket, so if you look at the Australian side these days, they are on the road a lot of the time, and it can be stressful on family, especially if you've got young kids as well, or even older kids, but certainly on the family life. I think most of those international sides do it really well. England do it very well, and so do Australia in terms of the family going along for portions of those trips when they're away for a long period of time. I guess in my case, playing county cricket, the travel wasn't so bad. I'm not sure Angie would agree with that, but for me, I was always within sort of a couple of hours from home drive, sort of the furthest spot, where certainly when I was playing for Warwickshire in the Midlands, so that became quite easy. I think when you're playing internationally and you're away for a month to 6 weeks at a time can certainly have its toll on the family, but I guess the key there is to make the most of your time when you get home, and try to make sure that the time you are at home, you make sure you make the most of that.
So you're currently working as a coach for the Victorian State Women's Team, and also the Melbourne Stars in the Big Bash with the women. How did you get involved in coaching? How did that come about?
Yeah, I guess as a player, certainly playing county cricket at the time, we had a head coach, a second team coach, and a physio, and that was our support staff. So as a player, you actually used to work together. So I guess for me, the coaching journey for me started back as a player, where you would pair up and you throw a lot of balls to each other. You talk about the game, obviously, as I've alluded to earlier, in the change room afterwards, or with the opposition players afterwards. So that's where the coaching journey for me started. If I look to my current role with the Victorian women's team and the Melbourne Stars team, I'm head coach of the state team, and we have 7 full-time staff connected with that team. So it makes a big difference in terms of what you can do in terms of resource. But I look back at at my learning. I think that time was invaluable, spent with other players, talking about the game, throwing balls to each other, and learning rather than a coach telling me what to do, which is something that we try not to do as a coach, or certainly I try not to do as a coach. But it certainly helped me on that journey of coaching. So transitioned into full-time coaching post-playing. I always had an interest in coaching throughout the playing career. Although I was the administration side of the game was an area that actually was a greater interest to me rather than coaching, as it happens. But found a couple of opportunities presented itself to coach post-playing career. Certainly I now found myself in this role.
Does Angie know you haven't retired yet?
Well, she does now, yeah.
So, working with the women's team, what are the implications around working with a women's team, like basically working with women?
I think the female. I think to start with, I think that the female space in terms of sport throughout the whole country is growing. The resource that's been put into female sport, not just within cricket, but you think about the Netball Super League, you think about the women's AFL. I think it's brilliant. I think females, or the females I'm involved with, are good learners. They want to get better. I think that the biggest challenge for them at the moment is transitioning from being an amateur player into a professional player. At the moment, it's semi-professional, so they're not classed as full-time professionals, even though the contact hours are around 15 to 18 a week. So it's quite a fair chunk. We train as much as the female Victorian squad will train similar hours to what the men do, or the Bush Rangers, or formerly known as the Bush Rangers squad do. They play more cricket, so they're on the road a lot more, but in terms of the training time, it's similar. So that's the biggest challenge that the female players face at the moment. In terms of me working with them, that's my 4th year in, so started the 4th season, so I know what to do, what not to do, what to say, what not to say. It's a bit like living at home, really. But in terms of the protocols, it's just just knock on the door and Yeah, I mean, I've certainly got good relationships with those players that I've been coaching for the last 3.5 years.
So Bermuda to Wales, back to Bermuda. I think there was a bit of South Africa in between all of that. Tell us about your faith journey, obviously from a young person through all of that.
I grew up, both my parents are Christians, so I grew up in a Baptist church, a small Baptist church in Swansea. So attended church regularly till the age of about 18 or 19, and then obviously with cricket and the travel involved in that, didn't attend regularly. I went on an England A tour in the mid-90s to India and Bangladesh, and on that trip, ECB at the time, so English Cricket Board at the time, used to send a chaplain with touring teams. And a friend of the chaplain, Andrew Wingfield Digley, a guy called Brian Hewitt, someone I got to know and still know to this day. In terms of my faith and my Christian journey, was something that I got to know at that stage. I was at Glamorgan at the time. I then left Glamorgan and moved to Warwickshire, and Brian Hewitt was a Worcester supporter, who's the county next door. So we used to catch it regularly, often when I was out. I used to go over and find him around the ground and have a chat. And that one thing led to another. And he attended a church in Solihull where I was actually living. And he said, look, why don't you come along? It was actually a sports service. So there was a couple of professional soccer players that were in attendance. So I went along. Fortunately, one of them has now passed away, a guy called Cyril Regis, who was an England soccer player. And a guy called Darren Moore who's currently coaching or managing West Brom in the Championship back in the UK. So I went along to that, and from there started to attend Renewal Church in the UK. To extent that in 2010, I guess from 2007, I attended regularly with the family, but actually, the conviction of the Holy Spirit for me was I needed to make a decision. I needed to sort myself out, and then thankfully, through the grace of God, I was allowed to do that, and got baptized in 2010.
And that was with your wife Angie at the same time, I believe.
Yes, we did. Both got baptized together with about 18 others, I think.
It's awesome. So how do you express your faith at work? What does that look like?
I guess for me it's all about behaviours. I think Christianity is a lifestyle. I think if we can demonstrate that in terms of how we're certainly reacting to situations that don't go our way and how we'd like, I think that can send a powerful message. And certainly through that, I've found through those behaviours that does open up conversations with not just players but also staff. So for me, it's about how you act and how you behave, and I think that will found that has led to discussions around myself and faith and what that looks like.
So you've mentioned Angie a few times, who I've had the pleasure of doing the prophetic prayer ministry through, which was awesome, and she's an awesome lady. Tell us a bit of how you guys met and what happened there.
We actually met in. I got this wrong last night, so we'll get it right today. We actually met in Durban back in the early 90s. It was 1992, not 1991. As I said last night, I was playing club cricket in Durban, so played summer in the UK, and then went across to play club cricket across in Durban, or happened to be Durban on this particular occasion. And then met Angie through a couple of the players in the side I was playing were family friends of hers and her family, so that's where that relationship started. We then got married in '96. I guess the to and froing did become difficult, so I made the decision to get married, and here we are today.
So you have two children, Cameron and Kendall. I know Cameron plays cricket. How does that father-son, coach-son, all that, how does that all work?
To say it doesn't. No, it does. It takes. I think it. Look, for me as a former professional player, I think there's always that that assumption that your kids will play, whether male or female. Certainly now with even Kendall. I mean, Kendall hits balls now in the garden as well, so she's getting into it, which is great. But I think with Cameron, with the son, there's that added pressure. There's something I haven't pushed. I actually believe that he was a good soccer player, so I actually want him to go down that route. But he's now into his cricket, and which is great. It's fantastic. I think it's the disciplines of the game. I think build you for life itself. There are more bad days than good days. Certainly in my case as a professional player, and I think the resilience that can build, or professional sport can build, the discipline, the work ethic, the reflection, the self-reflection. And that, as long as you're honest in that self-reflection, I think those life lessons can have an outstanding effect. So for me, it's great that he's playing cricket. I do throw balls to him when I can, and when he asks. But I don't push it. I want him to find what he wants to do.
So you sound like you're a busy person, especially travelling with working for a state team. How does that work with family life balance? Is there anything that you put in place that makes that work?
Oh, no, not officially. You're busy. Again, as I mentioned, I love what I do. So and thankfully, Angie's very supportive in terms of what I want to do. Which is great, because without that, I certainly wouldn't be able to do the job that I do. I do love the game. I love everything about the game. I can't think of. I wouldn't imagine myself being able to do anything else, whether that's coaching or the admin side. So I'm just fortunate that I have a partner that's very supportive within that role. What I try and do is make the most of the time when I'm back and when I'm around. But at times it's difficult. I mean, this last week, I was in Perth a week last Wednesday. We first started our first couple of games of the season. So I was away for sort of 4 or 5 days there, came back, had a day at home, then went off to an under-18 camp down in Sale for 3 days. So I've only got back sort of on Friday. So it's busy, but so unfortunate to have support from Angie and both the kids.
How did you come to be at Bayside Church?
The whole story of getting to Australia is quite interesting, but the Bayside Church itself, there's a old school friend of Angie, Lauren Hyde, as she's now known. I knew her back in the early 90s, Lauren Willie, so she's actually a member here. So when we decided to emigrate and to settle and choose Melbourne as a destination, Angie had linked up with Lauren. Didn't realise that she's actually in the Bayside area. We have friends that already lived in the Bayside area, so for us it was a simple decision to come along. And this is the only place we've attended, and I'm certainly very happy with where we find ourselves.
So my view of professional sports players, I must admit, it's taken a little bit of a change, because I think a lot of us have this view of the elite person, and we sort of put them on a pedestal, and what that looks like is, for me, has drastically changed having a chat to you, because you just seem like a normal, average, really down-to-earth guy.
Thanks. Look, I think the majority of professional sports people are. I think that's the truth of it. I think, for me, I'm a human being. I was just lucky. I think, there's lots of talented people out there that don't get the opportunity that I got, and sometimes that's just. You manage to get into a side or break into a team when there's an injury, and then your career transitions very quickly. So in terms of players are normal people, and I think that the majority in the changing room, if you got to know them, are like that. And there's obviously there's one or two that don't demonstrate those sort of traits or values, but I think for me it's for me, it was simple. I'm very lucky and very fortunate. Make the most of every day I can. Appreciate what I do, because there's thousands and thousands of people that would love to do, or certainly would like to have done what I did. And even now, from a coaching perspective, the opportunity to work in a high performance space in the female game, which is growing and growing. For me, it's irrelevant whether it's female or male. I'm coaching cricketers, but to coach professional cricketers is something that every day I'm thankful for.
Well, thank you, David. It's been awesome this morning to hear you share about your story and just appreciate everything you've been able to tell us this morning.